Hey guys, welcome back to the arena. I made a couple changes. I wanted to shift over from like the Jeskai Soldiers deck that I've been working with to a Boros version. Part of the reason was I wanted to explore Heroic Reinforcements, which is a really powerful card. And basically what this is 1 white, 1 red, and 2 other as a sorcery. Create 2 1/1 white soldier creature tokens, and then until end of turn, creatures you control gain +1/+1 and haste. So it affects all of your creatures, not just the tokens you create with this. It is a 4 mana sorcery, so it's kind of expensive for an aggressive deck. And one of the things that I like to do when I have a lot of cards that I want to play with, but I'm not sure the exact cuts I want to make, I started with this deck at I think about 80 cards. And then I just adjusted the land so that I had 36% land. So I think I was running like 29 lands and then 4 copies of reinforcements and a bunch of other cards I'm going to go through here just to kind of find out what works. It's a really fun strategy, I think, because like if you're like me and you have like a hard time figuring out like what you want to keep in and what you want to cut, it's a nice way to sort of play with everything and then just see what actually works. So eventually I did shave the deck down to 60 cards. And I kept in 1 copy of Heroic Reinforcements kind of as a top ender. This card is really, really powerful. But the reality is this type of deck just can't sustain more than like 1 or 2 copies of it. Just because you have all this stuff you want to do early game, you want to have enough creatures to have like a big enough threshold to really get in there. And the mana is also pretty rough because it's easy to cast the colors. It's just, being able to reliably hit 4 mana on turn 4 if you have 4 copies of this is really hard. So I shaved down to 1 copy. Kind of my overall thoughts here is that you could maybe like try running it with 2. I think 3 would probably be too many though. But okay, getting into the deck. So I ended up cutting out blue. I took out the Harbin Vanguard Aviator, which is a great card, but it does require a real density of soldiers. You have to have 5 soldiers in play for its effect to work. And so I found out in a lot of matches that basically I just couldn't quite hit that sort of critical mass of 5 soldiers. And so I decided to cut blue, add in reinforcements, and then I also explored this new card that came out recently, which I think is really good, actually. It's kind of a sleeper hit, I think. Fortress Kinguard. So this is a 1/2 dog soldier for 1 white and 1 other. And then when this creature enters the battlefield, it endures 1. And that means you can either choose to put a +1/+1 counter on it, or you can create a 1/1 spirit token. And even though the token isn't a soldier, creating 2 bodies over 1 card has traditionally been very powerful. The other card that we have sort of like that is Resolute Reinforcements, which is better in this deck because it does create them at instant speed, and they're both soldiers. But the extra point of toughness is actually surprisingly relevant, and there are times where you do want to give it the +1/+1 counter. So having the versatility is actually kind of nice. Anyways, part of the reason I wanted it in this deck is because if you can kind of go like this on turn 2, you're much more likely to be able to cast Knight Errant of Eos fairly easily, especially if you're up against like a mono black deck that's just like killing creature after creature every turn. A lot of other decks have a lot of removal, and so you're kind of facing this uphill battle. And sometimes like you just won't have enough creatures that can stick on the board to actually even be able to cast your Knight Errant. So this is a really good step kind of against that. So I like it a lot. Also, it makes reinforcements better because it hits 2 creatures, you get extra value. Same thing with Imidane's Recruiter. This pumps up both of these creatures. It's just really good for what this deck wants to do. In addition, it has a nice interplay here with Leonin Vanguard, which is a 1/1 cat soldier for 1 white, where at the beginning of combat on your turn, if you control 3 or more creatures, then this gets +1/+1 until end of turn, and you gain a life. The life gain is surprisingly relevant against Izzet Prowess mono red decks, and so being able to go like turn 1 Vanguard, turn 2 either Fortress Kinguard or Resolute Reinforcements to ensure you get that extra life gain and the extra pump for the extra damage is really, really good. It's just really good. I shifted, or I scaled down to 12 1-drops, which I think is kind of the bare minimum that you want for an aggressive deck. So we have 4 Leonin Vanguards, 4 Descendant of Storms, which is 1 white human soldier, and then as a 2/1, when it attacks, you can pay 1 white and 1 other, and then if you do, it endures 1, which means that you either get a +1/+1 counter on it, or you create a 1/1 spirit token. So really powerful for a 1-drop, I think. And then you also have 4 of the good old standby Recruitment Officer, 1 mana for a human soldier, which is a 2/1. And then if you have 1 white and 3 other, you can use that as an ability at instant speed to look at the top 4 cards of your library and then reveal a creature card with mana cost 3 or less from among them and put it into your hand. And then put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So this goes and finds any creature in the deck except for Knight Errant of Eos. So really nice there to be able to kind of have that long game, a little bit extra value. So these are your 1-drops. You also have 2 copies of Requisition Raid, and this card has been so amazing. I did have it as a 4-of in the Jeskai deck, and I'll kind of go into the reason why I shaved it down to 2 copies. But this is basically a catch-all that deals with anything that's an enchantment, an artifact. It also pumps your team. It does it at sorcery speed, but the effect is really powerful, and you can usually get a 2 or possibly even a 3 for 1 off of this card. So it's 1 white, and then you can pay 1 additional colorless mana to either destroy an artifact, destroy an enchantment, or put a +1/+1 counter on every creature that I suppose target player controls. It's basically always you, but yeah, so you can pay this can either cost 2 mana, 3 mana, or 4 mana, depending on how many modes you choose to do. The reason I cut down to 2 copies is because I found that the mono-red matchup and the Jeskai Prowess matchup was so one-sided in their favor that we just needed the extra lifelink. And so I added 4 copies of Sheltered by Ghosts, which is kind of like the premium way of dealing with creatures, actually dealing with permanents in general, because it does target non-land permanents, and then also giving your creature a lifelink, which is super important to be able to fight that damage, because mono red and Jeskai Prowess can do crazy amounts of damage as early as turn 3. So anyways, what this does, it's an enchantment, it's an aura, it's 1 white, 1 other, and then you enchant a creature that you control. When the aura enters the battlefield, you exile target non-land permanent that an opponent controls until this aura leaves the battlefield. And then in addition, your creature that's enchanted gets +1/+0 and has lifelink and ward 2. So it's harder to kill, harder to target. It's slightly pumped up, and it does have lifelink. Really big game for what we're trying to do fighting against these decks. So I made it a 4 copy. The other major reason that I brought this in is because this is one of the few cards that can also target an opposing temporary lockdown. So if you save a creature in hand, they use lockdown, they get your whole board, you play your creature, you play Sheltered by Ghosts, you get rid of the lockdown. Now it is a little bit flimsy because if they have any kind of removal, they can just completely blow you out. But the versatility of being able to deal with lockdown and also fight against the aggressive red decks, I think is just what makes this an auto-include. So for our 2-drops, we have 4 copies of Valiant Veteran, which is your Soldier Lord. It's a 1 white, 1 other core soldier, and then other soldiers get +1/+1. It's a 2/2, so it buffs up all of your other soldiers, and then when it dies, if it's in your graveyard, you can pay 2 white and 3 other, exile it from your graveyard to put a +1/+1 counter on every soldier you control. So really nice value card, has extra utility from the graveyard. An auto-include in any soldier deck. 4 copies of Reinforcements, which we talked about. 4 copies of Fortress Kinguard. 4 copies of Imodane's Recruiter to kind of go over the top. And so this is sort of your finisher. 1 red and 2 other. It's a human knight. When it comes into play, creatures you control get +1/+0 and gain haste until end of turn, including this creature. So it buffs up your whole team. You attack swinging for the win, hopefully. The other mode is it has a sorcery adventure, so you can pay 1 white and 4 other as a sorcery to create 2/2 white knight creature tokens with vigilance. And so if you are kind of flooding out on mana, you can do that. And then afterwards, you can buff everything up and attack and hopefully swing in. Great value card. Pretty much has been since it's been printed. 1 copy of Heroic Reinforcements, which again, play around with it. Maybe shift this up to like 2 or 3 copies. I don't know if the mana supports it as is, but this is just, my version. And then 4 copies of Knight Errant of Eos, which I think is going to be an auto-include in any kind of aggressive creature deck for as long as it's in standard. 1 white, 4 other. It's a creature. It's a human knight. It is a 4/4 that has Convoke, which means that you can lower the mana cost by 1 colorless or by 1 white mana, depending on the creatures that you tap that are in play. So you can, when the creature enters, look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may reveal up to 2 creature cards with mana value X or less from among them, where X is the number of creatures that convoked this creature. Put the revealed cards into your hand and then shuffle. So to convoke is you tap a creature and that lowers the mana cost by 1. It's fantastic with Fortress Kinguard and Resolute Reinforcements. And then the mana, we have, I think, 21 sources. Yeah, 21 land. We have 5 natural plains, 1 mountain, because we have, I guess, 5 red cards in the deck. So if you're facing land destruction, you can go and find your mountain to have your red source. 3 copies of Battlefield Forge. And you could run 4 here. I think I'm running 3 because the amount of damage flying around against the red decks is just crazy. And so having Pain Land is really kind of a liability. And also, we have good enough mana that we don't really need it to have 4. 4 copies of Inspiring Vantage, which comes into play tapped unless you control 2 or fewer other lands, and then taps for red or white. 4 copies of Sunbillow Verge, which taps for white, which can cast every card in our deck except for Recruiter or Reinforcements. And then it will also tap for red, or tap for red if you control a mountain or plains. So, there's a chance that it can be dual as well. And then you've got 4 copies of Cavernous Souls, which you will name either Soldier or Human, depending on what you have to cast. So usually you're going to be naming Soldier, but if you don't have like a red source and you have like Recruiter in hand, that's kind of when you would name Human. Or if you are facing counter magic, you could name Human just so they can't counter your Knight Errant of Eos, something like that. Yeah, that's the deck. Really been enjoying it. And I think, again, kind of the cards that are kind of in flux is how many copies of Reinforcements do you want to be running? How many copies of Requisition Raid do you want to be running? These are both really powerful cards. And I kind of settled on 6 non-creature cards here with Sheltered by Ghosts and Requisition Raid. And I think that Sheltered by Ghosts, you really do have to run a full play set just because of how much quick damage is flying around. But that's kind of the deck. And I think, the sleeper hit of this deck that ties it all together is Fortress Kinguard. This card looks kind of like a nothing crap common, but it's quite powerful. All right, let's jump into some games. So I haven't built a sideboard for this deck, and you certainly could run it in best of 3. I think I just enjoy best of 1 more, but I'd be curious to know, if you were going to build this into a best of 3 deck, how would you build the sideboard? So maybe put it in the comments if you're interested and want to share with other people. All right, this hand looks good. We're going to go ahead and lead out here with... We could lead out with Vanguard in the hopes that we draw one of our 8 creatures, either Resolute Reinforcements or the Dog Soldier, so that we can have this thing active and gain the life and hit in for the extra damage. Or we could go with the 2/1 that we have here that we know is going to do 2 damage. I think I'm just going to go with the Recruitment Officer, just because we don't have... it's an 8 out of 53 chance to draw the other cards we would need for the Vanguard. I suppose we could also draw another 1-drop and that would work, but I kind of like to weigh you know, what to do based on like the probabilities of. So let's just lead out here with Vanguard. Up against blue-green. Oh, this is probably Domain. Yeah, this is the Domain deck. So they're probably going to ramp here, maybe set up for like temporary lockdown. Yeah, up the beanstalk makes sense. And this is not really something that's like worth taking right here. I'd much rather just develop and just go into Knight Errant. This is also good because if they have lockdown next turn, it won't hit the Knight Errant. And now we've got our 4th land, so we can set up for reinforcements. The real question is, like, do we expect them to have Day of Judgment or not? Because, like, if we push with reinforcements and they've got nothing, what is that? That's 2, 4, 7, 12, 15. So it's not lethal. And there's also a decent chance that they have, like, binding to get rid of, like, Knight Errant here. So I think I'm just going to develop a little bit more. So with that said, I'm just going to play the Vantage here since we don't need the extra mana. And then I think pre-combat, I will also play the Veteran here for 2 reasons. It helps pump our team and also make sure that there's at least 3 creatures if they use like binding before we go to combat. And then I'll play this afterwards. Okay, they had Ride's End. Since they have Ride's End, they're a little less likely to just go Judgment next turn. They might still do it. So the question here is, do we want to hold the Officer because we do have an extra land? So like next turn we could go like Officer plus reinforcements and push for 7. If they board wipe, like it's a little bit kind of safer instead of getting 4 for 1 here. Unless we think they've just like got nothing. So otherwise, if they have the, what is it, is it the Mistmoors? Where if they like pay 4, create 2 1/1 blockers, then like next turn we go like Officer plus reinforcements. They block like here and here. And they still take 10, 11, 12, 13. Okay, so I think we hold since we can play around both of those options. Unless they have like 2 pieces of removal or... All right, they had the lockdown. So I'm happy that we kept the Officer. I guess maybe they just like needed the extra white or they drew into it. We could also go like Officer plus Sheltered by Ghosts, but this is just 2 mana efficient. I think we just go for it. Also, this forces them to have like Day or something like right now. Yeah, Beza's pretty good. So we could go Sheltered by Ghosts, get rid of Lockdown. They will get a card off the Beanstalk, which is kind of annoying. But we do get Veteran. And that will allow us to kind of sort of profitably attack a little bit. Like we lose probably Officer to Beza, but then we can push through for some damage. So yeah, because I think we want to put Sheltered by Ghosts on this Vanguard that's not attacking. Otherwise, we could like try to spend 4 mana and find something and just like set up for another turn. But I don't think we want them to untap here. So yeah, I think I'm just going to do it like this. We do lose Officer, but we've got another one. And then here we hope they just don't have like removal for Sheltered by Ghosts, which is super awkward if they do. It's pretty risky play, but like they have a full hand and like we're, yeah, kind of playing on the top of the deck here a little bit. This probably means we also can't safely attack with Vanguard in case they have like another Ride's End. Because like Ride's End to get back their lockdown would be a complete blowout. Okay, they're just digging, so we feel pretty good. Maybe they don't have something. Yeah, and they did have the Overlord of the Mistmoors, is what I thought. So we kind of needed like to draw something big here. Again, if they have Ride's End, it's a complete blowout. So if we attack with just these 4 creatures, we're not pushing lethal. But we've got the mana to like replay Veteran, so it's still pretty good. It would be exact lethal if they had nothing, but like they've got a full hand. Like I've got to believe they've got something. I think we're gonna do the calculated safe play here. We could also Officer right now. Actually, let's Officer and see what we get. Okay, Valiant Veteran is a nice pickup here. So now if we play that main phase, again, I think it's too dangerous to attack with this Vanguard. So if we're just pushing with everything else, if they have nothing, we're still presenting lethal. Actually, Ride's End, hang on. Ride's End costs 2. They won't be able to cast it because they only have 3 mana. So I think we attack with everything. They could shrink our team if we attack with Veteran. So if we don't attack with Veteran, do we still have them? Like they can still use Ride's End on like this 4/4 if we don't quite get there. They also, like if they just block here and they have Ride's End as well, it's pretty awkward. Huh. I feel like they've got Ride's End, which definitely will... Let's see, if we attack with everything, they block here. Ride's End, this one. 3, 5, 8. They go to 1. Yeah, I just don't think we can risk it. Okay, well, they get lost. It didn't actually matter. Yeah, they had it either way. We kind of just like needed them to have nothing there. Okay, that is pretty good, I have to admit. It's a pretty nice rip. And if we draw like Requisition Raid or another Sheltered by Ghosts, like we're still in this game for sure. That's why that those cards I think are so important and so powerful right now. Because like Lockdown is super good. Yeah, the problem here is we're not. I think we just have to sit and just like hope we draw something better. Okay, that's probably game right there. Yeah, that's not gonna do it. Okay, so we had like 1 or 2 turns where we could have drawn out of it. If we drew into like a Requisition Raid or another Sheltered by Ghosts, we could have like played it on one of our creatures, gotten rid of the temporary lockdown, everything comes back, then we use Immodane's Recruiter to give it all haste, push in for the win. So we had a couple top deck possibilities there. So that's kind of coming back to the whole thing, like how many copies of that card do you want to run? Because like Requisition Raid was definitely like what we were looking to play, or I suppose another Sheltered by Ghosts. Opening hand looks great. We're happy going down to 2 land. I think. I guess we lose the Sunbill Verge here since I don't know if they're like blue-black. And now since we have double 1-drop, we'll lead out here with Vanguard. Okay, this is the Kirin deck. This deck actually does surprisingly well against it, just because we make a lot of tokens, and so we can maybe, if we're lucky, kind of outpace all of their bouncing nonsense. But this is like the kind of deck I'm talking about, where they just have like infinite removal over and over and over, and that's what we're sort of playing an uphill battle against. Now we lose Officer since we don't have the mana, and we want to make more tokens. Okay, that was... The thing is, we know they're going to keep like replaying all this nonsense. Like we could go for Veteran here, but then we just lose another good creature. I think we actually want to go for Descendant and just make a token to give us a little bit of insurance against all of their nonsense. Even though it's like a slower play, I suppose they could also keep attacking our hand. Yeah, okay. But losing a Veteran here isn't the worst, because we can replay it from the yard. Okay. And now the question is, do we want to like hold a land in case they like start redoing this? But I suppose we're getting closer to like the other Veteran. So yeah, I think we just play it. We make another token. We just want to like build as big a board as possible. If they have like the new creature that's like the dragon, that's like the -X to everything, where it gets shuffled back in, I can't remember the name of it. That's kind of a beating. But I don't think this deck runs it. Okay, this only pumps one creature right now, so I think I'm going to hold on to this. Yeah, I think that like making these tokens though is definitely correct, just because of all the recursion nonsense that they're doing here. Oh, I didn't realize we can use this at instant speed. That's kind of cool. Okay, that was a really nice pickup. It's like one of the ways we try to stay ahead of their nonsense. And I think we could make another token here, but making this a little bigger. Actually, since they got back the -3/-3, let's just keep making tokens. Yeah, these are all our insurance policy to not losing important creatures. Yeah, so now they want to trade like their -3/-3 and like block our Knight Errant. So I think we just go even bigger and finally overpower them. Okay, definitely another veteran. Probably another recruitment officer, even though like this gives us more creatures, but this will help us dig, and we've already got one that they might want to kill. So I think I want these two. Yeah, and they're just gonna pack it in. See, that's the power of this deck. It just keeps going. And like the 2/1, whatever it's called, that makes extra creature tokens is super useful in that matchup. All right, opening hand looks good. We're going to lead out here with Vanguard into reinforcements. Oh, you know, I think I recognize this creator. Let's say hello. It's been a little while since I've seen him. Yeah, he was kind of one of the other creators with Ace MTG. Back about a year ago, we were sort of doing sort of the fun tournaments and whatnot. So yeah, definitely check out his channel if you haven't already. All right, let's go human here since we don't have a bread source yet. Then we can just go these two. So assuming he just does cut down on this one. Okay, that works too. Trying to think how important Sheltered by Ghost is going to be in this deck. Like, he has a lot of removal, so I'm a little bit tempted to just get rid of it. The problem is that he could just overpower our creatures too, so I think maybe the safer play is getting rid of a reinforcements here. I know it's not ideal, but like, if he plays... Yeah, there's enough things he could play that would just make it annoying. I think I'm going to play reinforcements here, because I want... He probably has like another stab or something like that. Yeah. The real answer is I don't know his deck, and so that's why I wanted kind of like a measured approach against him. Yeah, he did have the stab. Because if he just tries to like play like Shieldred or something like that and just like settle the board... He could still just control the board. But like, Veteran is so good right now, I think we just have to keep it. So like, I think now we let go of the Sheltered by Ghosts and just go for the push. This is just too much pressure to turn down. Okay, that was a nice pickup. It's kind of the same here. Like, Kinguard is... But we want to have this... I think we're just going to play Veteran here. And yeah, we just trade one of our Veterans for his Whipcracker, and that's fine. Okay. Yeah, just had enough pressure to get there. Haven't seen that deck before, though. Actually, the Whipcracker is kind of a nice metagame call against sort of the tokens that are in like Jeskai Prowess. So I could certainly see it being a decent deck. Yeah, this opening hand looks great. No one drop, but being able to go set up for Knight Errant is pretty powerful. Because they could have removal here, I think I'm going to wait for reinforcements. Like, we could play Kinguard, but I want to make sure that we can try to hit this. So I'm just going to play reinforcements like end of turn. Just in case they had like Burst Lightning or something like that. Okay, super nice pickup. Now I'm less worried about which of these I want to play. I'll play just, I think just Kinguard, just because it's a little bit better stat-wise. If they know we have the Knight Errant, they could interrupt it right here with removal, but I guess they're letting it through. So that's like a consideration. We could have just played it since they have like no priority, but I think you do want to typically go for it. Now we can hopefully hit like Immodane's Recruiter, set up for a big swing. Yeah, there we go. And then if we draw like a 1-drop, it's just like a bunch of damage. And we have Sheltered by Ghosts in case they have like Lockdown. So we're pretty well insulated. Okay, and we've got another recruiter. What could they have here? I think this is like the enchantment decks. They have like shard, sharding, whatever it's called. Shard of something. The +1/+1 and like untargetable hexproof. So it'd be like a 4/4. And they like eat one of our creatures, but we don't really care. We could go like reinforcements into Knight Errant. Like I don't think they have like board wipes. I guess ultimately it doesn't really matter. But they could have like some crazy sequence next turn where they have like lifelink and do like 1 billion damage. So I think it's maybe just safer to just Sheltered by Ghost this. But never wait. They have the hexproof. So I think I'm just going to go like super big because it doesn't really matter. Okay, so let's pick up Veteran, and I guess sort of the same either way. Like 2 veterans or like a creature and a recruiter are sort of the same. I think I'm just going to go like a 1/1. We can play it this turn, so that's kind of nice. Gives us an extra life in case it matters. And then I think we just attack with a 4/4 here, because we know that they can make this like a 4-power. And they pretty much need to have like Sheltered by Ghosts here to stay in this game right now. This has got to be it. Yeah, that'll do it. But yeah, I think that the Dog Soldier, that new card, is just a real sleeper hit. It makes this deck work so much better. Fortress Kinguard. Yeah, opening hand looks great. And while I think Sheltered by Ghost has its like weaknesses and problems, I think it's a necessity in this current meta, especially if you're in like the best of 1 space. Okay, now let's lead out with Vanguard since we know we're going to have the 3 creatures on turn 2. And the life might matter. If this is like the Helping Hand deck with like the 5/5 that does makes, what's it called, the Abyssal, whatever it is. But this might just be the Omniscience deck. It's probably more likely the Omniscience deck. I suppose it could be like Jeskai Control. Yeah, it's Omniscience. And they have it in the yard. Oof. This might just be a quick loss. Like, the one problem is we don't have any real interaction for the graveyard game 1. Or if you're, if you're doing best of 3, you can like board into it, but they pretty much just have to like not have the Abuelo's Awakening for us to have a chance here. If they have turn 4 Abuelas, I think we just lose. Yeah, because we need like one more draw step. Question is, do we need to play the officer here? Like, I'd like to in case they've got... The thing is, though, like, if they drew into Lockdown, we need to have a cheap creature to be able to play this Sheltered by Ghosts on. So I think I hold the Recruitment Officer here. Like, that is how we get blown out. Like, if they happen to have, like, Lockdown and we don't have, like, a way to get rid of it. Okay, we have a chance. They had a tapped land, so maybe we get there. Okay, they probably are holding Afara's Dispersal in hand, which is, like, their one way to interact. Also, the funny thing against this deck... if they don't have Omniscience in the yard and they are holding 1 blue open for like a Afara's Dispersal, you can actually buy yourself another turn by just not attacking, which is sort of counterintuitive, but I definitely lost a game where like they had that exact setup and I did like some damage but not quite enough for lethal, and they used the Dispersal to get the Omniscience into the yard and then untapped and did Abuelo's Awakening. So just something to consider. All right, so now if we go Vanguard plus Recruiter, I think that's enough. Like, even with Dispersal, they, like, get rid of this and one of these, and then it's, like, 3, 5, 7, 9. Oh, God. We can get them to 1. That's so awkward. So they need to have the Afara's Dispersal, but if they have it, then I think they might have us here. So we're not out of the woods quite yet. Yeah, they've got the Dispersal. Ugh, it's gross. They stabilize at 1. There it is. So again, we just have to hope that they don't hit Abuelo's Awakening. Man, 1 damage short. Oh, what a beating. Yeah, there it is. Oh well, so it goes. Ooh, they didn't have it. Oh, wow. Did not expect that. It's kind of a gift. But yeah, we easily could have lost right there for sure. But I mean, like, some of the time they just won't have it. So there's that. So yeah, I really like this deck. It's a lot of fun. As you can see, like the synergy between a lot of the cards is really, really good. And then it kind of comes down to how many copies of like Requisition Raid plus Sheltered by Ghosts do you want to run, and how many copies of Reinforcements do you want to run? Because they're like definitely your power cards. The question is like, how much do you want to give up in terms of creatures to be able to get there? And since we're at 21 lands, I don't really think you can go too much below that. Maybe you can get away with 20 lands, but like, if you have 20 lands, what are your chances of actually playing reinforcements? So I think it's kind of a balancing act. I feel like this is pretty close to correct right now. If I had to cut like one card, oh man. Like I would probably cut, if I had to cut a card, I'd cut like one recruitment officer and put like a third requisition rate in. Like you could do that. I think it's maybe better as is, but if you were going to make like one minor change, that's what I would change. Yeah, that's the deck. Thanks guys for watching, and we will see you for the next one.